Okay, fourth period. So today you guys get to start your very first day of SOL review. All right, so you should all have a little mini packet, which is basically the first section of your SOL packet. All right, the calendar at the front of this packet is not exactly how things are going to go. This is not going to take that many blocks to do. All right, in fact, I think it's going to take about 3 blocks to go through this first little packet. So what I want you guys to do is just kind of keep in mind what you have in front of you. At the end of this little unit, what you guys will do is take a quick mini quiz, which is going to be about a 10-point, I think it's a 10 question, 1 point each quiz. All right, and please keep in mind there are no retakes on these quizzes, so you have to do well the first time, which should not be a problem as long as you do the homework and take notes and pay attention during class. And you are going to have 5 of these little packets, which means at the end of this SOL review you should have 50 points in quiz grade. All right, and these are going to be some of the last grades of the quarter, so again, please make sure you study for these. They're going to be about as hard as those homework quizzes are, all right, or were. And so just make sure that you do well, because every point is going to count on these. All right, so today, the first thing we are going to cover today is going to be proportions and percents. All right, we're going to start with proportions. All right, so if you look at this first little set of notes, okay, what it says is that a proportion is an equation showing that 2 ratios are equal to each other. So in other words, we talked about this when we first did proportions, that if I were to give you 2 ratios and ask you, hey, are these proportions? Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to cross multiply, all right? And if your 2 answers are equal, then they are proportions. If they're not, then they're not a proportion. All right, but if you want to solve a proportion, you're going to use basically the same thing. So when I say solve a proportion, sometimes I can just give you a problem like this one up here, or what they'll do is give you a word problem, something like in 5 hours I can go 782 miles. How many miles could I go in 4 hours? So you're going to do the cross, you're going to set up your 2 ratios and then do cross products. The one important thing about your ratios is if I were to do a ratio for the problem I just gave you, I could choose which way I wanted to do it, but if I went miles or hours to miles, I'd have to go hours to miles, hours to miles. Okay, you just have to be consistent. Once you have that, then you're going to cross multiply. So I have 5 times x, which gives us this 5x up here, all right? And then 16 times 13, which gives us the 208. Okay, initially all you have is this. So now you have this one-step equation, and in order to get rid of this 5 that's on the x, you're going to divide both sides by 5, which is what the lines were for. And 208 divided by 5 is 41.6, so that's the answer you get. All right, so one place that you guys did see proportions a lot was when we did percents. We did those percent proportions. Okay, and the percent proportion, if you remember, was percent over 100 equals is over of, or some of you guys preferred the part over whole. All right, the other thing is we also did most of these questions not just using proportions, but we also did them as percent equations. So I want to show them to you both ways, and you guys can kind of pick which way you want to do it. All right, so for the first example, and notice it says setup only, okay? It says what percent of 16 is 4? So my percent, I don't know, so I always give that a p. So it's percent over 100 equals, and then is over of. So what percent of 16 is 4? So my is 4, my of is 16. All right, and there's my setup. All right, but if I wanted to do this as a percent equation, what I do is I just do a literal equation, or a literal translation. So percent we don't know, so that gets p. Of always means times. 16 is 16. Is means equals, and then you have 4. So if I was going to do this as a percent equation, I have p times 16, but remember algebraically we write that as 16p, and then equals 4. Okay, so there's your algebraic equation. The biggest difference between these two methods is if I were to cross multiply here, I have 16p equals 400. And then I divide both sides by 16, and I would end up with P equals 25. Okay, and since your answer is a percent, I can just change this to a percent, which is nice, by just adding the percent sign. All right, but when I do any sort of equation, you guys will remember I'll have to move my decimal point back and forth to make it into percents or to make them into decimals. All right, so here you're going to divide both sides by 16. All right, and then I get P equals 1/4 or 0.25. Okay, but since it's 0.25, I have to change it to 25% by moving my decimal point. Okay, so that's the biggest difference between the two methods. All right, so let's try one more. It says, what number is 20% of 5? So my percent is 20 over 100 equals is, so it says what number is, so that means that's my unknown, so I'll give it the x, and then of 5, and there's my 5. Okay, so then again, cross multiply and you get an answer. If I was going to do a strict literal or a strict translation to make it into an equation, what I would do is what number, that's my x, is my equals. 20%, remember, with an equation you have to change it to a decimal, so 0.20. Of means times 5. So my equation is x equals 0.20 times 5. Okay? Okay, number 3. If I was going to do this as a proportion, 3 is 75% of what number? So I have 75%, so 75% over 100 equals, since it says 3 is my is, and then of what number gets my exponent. Or I'm sorry, not my exponent, my variable. Okay, if I was going to do an equation, I've got 3, and then is equals, 75% is 0.75, of means times x. So again, my equation would be 3 equals 0.75x. Okay? So those are the two methods. All right? So a couple of other things to remember is, remember with tax and tip, you're adding tax and tip to find the total. Okay? With discount, you're subtracting your amount of discount, okay, to get your new sale price. All right? So we're going to do a couple of those problems too. All right, the big thing is percent of change. All right, percent of change is one of those questions or types of questions that you will definitely see on this SOL. And when we learned it, a lot of you guys thought it was really easy, and I said the hardest thing is going to be to remember how to do it when you see it. All right, so there are 4 ways that they can ask you for a percent of change. There's 4 ways they can ask you the question. Obviously, they're going to say, what is the percent of change? That's obvious. Or they can say, what is the percent of increase? That's pretty obvious. All right, and then they say, what is the percent of decrease? Again, same thing. It's this number 4 that a lot of you guys forgot on the quiz when we took this quiz. So they can also ask you, what is the discount rate? So in other words, the way they would phrase the question is something like, I bought a pair of shoes and I spent $80 on them. They were originally $150. What was the discount rate on the shoe? Or what was the sale rate? Or what was the rate of discount? Okay, so what they're asking you to do is basically a percent of change question. All right, so let's review percent of change. Okay, remember the formula for percent of change is the amount of change. So you're going to subtract your two numbers over the original number. Okay, remember original number means what you started with, or original number also means like chronologically in time, like Monday comes before Wednesday, or 1999 comes before 2019. All right, it doesn't matter what order I give you the information in, it matters which one took place first. All right, so like I could give you the question today, a gallon of gas cost $2.76. In 1999, a gallon of gas cost $1.01. What's a percent of change? Okay, in this case, your original amount is still $1.01 because 1999 came before today. All right, but I gave you the information in the opposite order, so don't get mixed up. It's always what comes first chronologically. All right, so on this question, Okay, on Monday, 720 people went down the water slide at Atlantis. Due to the rain, only 180% went on Tuesday. All right, so obviously my original amount, or the amount that I started with, is what happened on Monday, because Monday comes before Tuesday. So my original is always going to be your denominator, and that's 720. Okay, and then it says the amount of change is your numerator. So I'm going to take my two numbers, 720 and 180, and subtract them. So now I have 540 over 720. Okay, I'm going to divide that. So 540 divided by 720 is going to give me 0.75. All right, but remember, since I want percent of change, I have to move my decimal point 2 spaces to the right to make it a percent. So there's my percent. Okay, so there was a 75% of change. Okay, sometimes they might, if they didn't say increase, decrease, since the amount of people went down, you might want to put a minus sign in front of that. Again, that, remember, that means decrease also. Okay? All right, next, after percent of change, we are going to talk about simple interest. Okay, when we did interest, we did simple and we did complex interest. Okay, for the SOL, you only have to know simple interest. And here is your formula, I equals PRT. All right, let's go through this one more time. I is the amount of interest. Remember how much money you made, or how much more you accrued, or how much more debt you accrued. It has nothing to, it does not include the original amount you started with. The P is your principal, which is how much you started with in the bank or how much you are loaning. Your rate is always given in a percent, but you need to change that into a decimal by moving your decimal point 2 spaces to the left. Okay, time is always in years. So if I give it to you in months, the way you figure out what it is divide by 12. So here we have 18 months. 18 months is 1.5 years. So that's the number you have to put in when you do time. Or if I said 20 months, not 20, that's not a good one. Or I'm trying to think, 15 months, that's 1.25 years. Okay, so that's, don't forget that your time has to always be in years. All right, so the first question is, Sydney deposits $500, so there's my principal, in a checking account, and it pays an interest rate of 3% per year. There's my rate. How much interest will Sydney have after, how much interest, that's not worded right, how much interest will Sydney earn in 18 months? All right, so let's plug it into the equation. So I have I equals, and we said principal was 500, rate 3% is 0.03. Okay, don't put 0.3, because what happens is that's 30%, and that's way too much money. All right, 18 months is 1.5 years. So all you're going to do is plug this into your calculator, 500 times 0.03 times 1.5, and you get 22.5, but since we're doing money, we call that $22.50. Okay, but again, as a reminder, this amount right here is just the amount of interest. Okay, so if you look at this next question, it says find the total amount that will be in her account after 18 months. So in other words, I want to know how much she has altogether. Okay, a really easy way to think of it is if I say you have $10 in your pocket and you earn 6 more, what's your total? Everybody knows it's 10 and 6, which is 16. They're asking the exact same question here. If you started with 500, okay, and you earn $22.50, how much do you have total? So 500 plus $22.50 is going to give me $522.50. So that's how much she has total, okay? So please be very, very careful and make sure you know what they're asking for, if they're asking for your total or just the amount of interest. Okay, so everyone should have a calculator, all right? And if you go to the next page, right here, we have the Bahamas Set 1 practice. Okay, there are 7 questions here. What I would like you guys to do is go through and do them. So what I need you to do again, pause the video. This one will probably take you 10 to 15 minutes. So pause the video. We'll have Miss Logan pause the video, and then you guys are going to work. Okay, so go ahead and pause. All right. Okay, so now that everyone's had a couple of minutes or some time to work on this, all right, let's go through these questions really quickly. All right, first we have Danny took Sandy to a dinner at the Bahama Grill. Here's the cost of their dinner, and they want to leave a 15% tip. What is the total? So here's your big word, the total amount that they want to leave, or how much he paid for the night. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to figure out what the tip was. Okay, since tip is 15%, I do 15% of $23.40. Okay, so I just multiply them, and I get my tip amount is $3.51. Now, what a lot of kids do on a question like this, you guys will see, is if they're rushing, they don't read the question very carefully, they get $3.51, they see the answer here, and they circle it automatically because they're like, oh, I did the math, here's my answer, and they circle it. Okay, but if you read, it says they want the total. They don't want the tip amount, they want the total. All right, we've said it before. Remember, guys, there are people who actually are paid to make all of these good wrong answers on these tests. Okay, so you have to understand a lot of times your wrong answer will be one of the answer choices, even if it's wrong, but what you're doing is you're making a very common wrong or a common error, which is giving you that wrong answer. All right, so what we want to do to get the total bill, or how much Danny owes total, is you're going to take his original amount, which was $23.40, and then you're going to add that tip, and that's his total. And if we add those two together, then you get C, $26.91. All right. Okay, number 2, Shreya gets a $3,500 loan so she can go on a Disney cruise. The interest rate is 7.5. How much money will she owe the bank in 4 years? Okay, this is one you have to be careful with too, because remember, if they're saying how much will she owe, she doesn't just owe interest, she owes everything. So this is another question that is asking for what is her total that she owes. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out how much interest she owes. So we're going to do principal times rate, which is going to be 0.075, times time, and it says she has it in there for 4 years. All right, if I multiply this out, I get $1,000.50. Okay, but remember, we want total. So her total is how much she started with, which was $3,500, plus the amount of interest she has accrued, which is $1,050. If you add those together, you get D, $4,550. But again, I want you guys to notice this interest number is right there as an answer choice, but it is, again, the wrong answer choice. Okay, number 3, Randy bought a sweater that's on sale for 65% off. Okay, something I want you guys to notice is 65% off means it is going to be on sale, or the amount of discount is over half the price of the sweater. So it's going to be a pretty cheap sweater, or the sweater is going to be cost less than half. All right. Okay, so a couple of things here. Let's just walk through this problem using normal, just English language. All right. The first thing you want to do is figure out what the amount of discount is. So to do that, you're going to do 65%. All right. Times. So we've got discount equals 65% of $78. So we're going to multiply those two together, and if you multiply it, you get $50.70. Okay, remember, this is the dollar amount of your discount. Okay, and now in order to get your new sale price, or how much you're paying for the sweater, you take the original price, which was $78, and then you subtract how much you're discounting it for. All right, and then you should get $27.30. Okay, I know that some of you guys remember when we did this. The way some of you did it is if the cost of the sweater is 100% and they took 65% off, that means you're only paying 35%. So what some kids do is they do 35% of 78, and this is the answer they get. Again, if you don't understand it, don't do it that way. Okay, number 4, this is a rate of change, or a percent of change. What's a percent of increase? Okay, so the first thing we want to do is take the amount of change. So she has 20 and 5 over the original. Okay, the first day she bought 5, A couple days later, she bought 20, so the original is 5. All right, so I get 15 over 5, which equals 3, which then I have to change it to a percent by moving my decimal 2 spaces to the right, so I get 300%. All right, so my answer is B. All right, remember, if you double something, it means you went up 100%. Okay? So don't be afraid when you see 300% and think that's weird, because it's very, very possible. All right, number 5, Liam puts $800 in a savings account. Okay, he has an interest rate of 2%, and he's only going to leave it there for 6 months. So, and this question is just asking you for how much interest. So you don't have to do anything after you multiply it out. So interest is principal times rate, which is 0.02, times time. 6 months is only half of a year, so I did 0.5. If I multiply all this together, we get $8. So he made $8. All right, number 6. Mateo has $24 in his taxi card at the beginning of the day. At the end of the day, he only had $7. What is the percent of decrease in the amount left on his taxi card? Okay, so he started with 24, okay, and ended with 7. So we'll do, this is my change over the original, and again we said he started with 24. Okay, if I do 24 minus 7, I get 17 divided by 24. Okay, and again it says round to the nearest whole percent. Right, so if I divide that out, I get 0.708. All right, and I'm going to stop there, because in order to turn this into a percent, all I have to do is go 2 spaces, so 1, 2. So there's my new decimal point. There's the number that rounds, so that means this is going to be 71%. Okay. Last question here is, Maria starts with $363.75 in her bank account. Okay, she made 1 deposit and 2 withdrawals. Okay, so remember, and so they want to know what her final balance down here is going to be. All right, remember, a withdrawal means you are withdrawing or taking out. So you always subtract that from how much money you have. A deposit is when you leave something or you add something. So that is going to get added. So if we start with this amount and we subtract $47.50, okay, Maria now has $316.25. Okay, but then she deposits some money, so she adds $91.25, and she ends up with $407.50. All right, then she takes out some more money. She spends some money and takes out $54.75. And if I subtract that out, I get $352.75, which is answer choice B. Okay. So this entire section is pretty much common sense consumer math. Okay, so please make sure you study these, because these should not be that hard for you, because they are going to be more common sense. Okay, the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the real number system. So let's review that. What we mean is, remember, putting them into their subsets, like rational, irrational, whole, all of that stuff. Okay, so you guys will see there is a diagram in your packet that kind of reviews all of the different number systems with you. Okay, so let's just all kind of do this little activity together. So what I want to show you is this. All right, where do I belong? So what I'm going to do is put up some different some numbers, and I want you to tell me, or I want you guys to stop and think which subset these numbers belong in, the smallest group they belong in. The first one is -8. So obviously, okay, one thing I don't want you guys to always think is every negative number is an integer, but remember, integers is where negatives are introduced, and since this is a whole integer number or a whole negative number, this is an integer. All right. Next is pi. All right. Okay. This one belongs in the irrational numbers because remember, it is a number that does not repeat or never ends. All right, next is 0. Okay, think about where 0 goes. All right, 0 is your whole number. Okay, because remember, the difference between a whole number and a natural number is the number 0. Naturals do not have 0, but wholes do. All right, next one is 7.3 times 10 to the second power. Okay, the first thing you have to do, obviously, is figure out what number is 7.3 times 10 to the second power. This is scientific notation. And since your power is positive and it's a 2, you're going to make your number bigger by moving your decimal point to the right. So you should end up with 730. 730 is a natural number, so that belongs to the natural set. All right, the next one, 14 2/3. Okay, this is a rational number because remember, every number that can be written as a fraction is definitely rational. All right, so your rationals are going to be your decimals that repeat and decimals that end, any number that can be written as a fraction, etc. All right, so there you go. There are your answers for that one. Okay, so next, what we're going to do is we are going to try one more. Okay, for this one, the square root of 13. Okay, the square root of 13, because it is not a perfect square, is going to be irrational. So remember, all of your non-perfect squares are irrational. All right, next, 7%. Okay, again, remember in math, we don't deal with percents. We always change them into decimals. So this would be changed into 0.07, which is rational. -8/4. Don't forget to simplify before classifying. So -8/4 is the same thing as -2, which is an integer. The next one is 0.2 repeating. This is also rational because it is a repeater. Okay, the last one, -9 in parentheses squared. All right, this is an important one just so we can talk about it. Okay, the answer to -9 squared is +81. All right, because remember, this exponent has on glasses, so it knows that it's doing -2 times -2. I'm sorry, -9 times -9, and a negative times a negative gives you a positive. If I were to take off the parentheses, that means my exponent no longer has glasses, which means that all he sees is the 9, so he says 9 times 9 is 81, and then he sees the negative and he adds it on at the end, so your answer would be -81, which would then make it an integer. But because this base has parentheses or glasses around it, it ends up being +81, which again is a natural number. Okay, fourth period. What you get to work on for me is your homework. So if you look at the next couple of pages, you see that there is 2 sheets of paper, and they say cabin work. All right. The first set says Bahamas set 1, proportions and percents. There are 5 questions. Please make sure you do those. All right, and the next page says Bahamas set 1, real number system. And that goes up to 15. All right, and you're going to answer all of those. All right, the answer key is posted on Google's site, so please again check your answers. The one question that people seem to be struggling on is number 5 on your first homework page. Okay, so please be careful with that one and make sure you understand how to solve it and how I got my answer. All right, then good luck, have fun, and I will see you guys next week.